Well, hello, Mike. I glad you'll be able to join me today. We've got Mike Parwana here. We're going to be talking about the legislative system versus the Board of Supervisors system. Mike is a candidate for the county board as a Queenberry at-large supervisor. He's former Democrat chair of the Queensberry Democratic Committee and a local business owner for quite a few years. We've had some contact over the years. I think as we got to know each other better, we got to get along better. One thing I would say is that we're both pretty outspoken. We don't always agree, but I think we respect each other quite a bit. And you'll be getting my vote this year for one of those spots. So one thing we do agree on is this idea of how the county system is structured now. And I'll let you pick it up from here.
Okay, well, thanks for your vote. And I want to thank you for the chance to talk about, local government and how we can improve it. I think this really ties in closely with my main objective in trying to be elected in order to change the system of representation for county government for Queensberry to be a ward system. But if I get that done, and I should get that done, I think most people agree that it should be done. It will create problems for the supervisor system that we may get into or not later, but there's plenty to talk about. So I guess we have slide number 1 here, and basically it's one person, one vote, which derives from the 14th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause, and also the 5th Amendment regarding due process. So the Board of Supervisors is made up of supervisors from 11 different towns in Warren County and the city of Glens Falls. The city of Glens Falls is about 22% of the population, and the town of Queensberry is about 44% of the population. Glens Falls mayor does not sit on the county board, so Glens Falls has 5 supervisors who are elected by ward. Queensberry has a supervisor who is elected town-wide, and then there are 4 additional supervisors who are elected at large or town-wide. At large means town-wide. The other 34% of the population is split between 10 different towns. Did I get that number right, Travis? 10 towns.
Yeah, I believe it's 10 towns. So 20 people total. 10 of those people represent 34%, and 10 of those people represent 66% of the people in the county.
And one little strange fact is that the at-large supervisors from Queensberry, the 4 of those, and the 5 supervisors from Glens Falls are the only ones who are directly elected to the county board of supervisors. The rest are elected in their town elections to serve as essentially the mayor of their town. So they get a paycheck as the quote unquote mayor of their town, and they also get a paycheck from the county. The other 9 supervisors from Glens Falls and Queensberry only get 1 paycheck to serve on the county board. So interesting tidbit.
Yeah, and I always thought that you weren't allowed to hold 2 elected positions. I thought that was against the law, but in this case, I think they've ruled that these really aren't 2 elected positions, even though you could see there might be a conflict of interest there in the budget of the towns versus what the county might be able to do for you, et cetera.
Yeah, in my feeling is that there certainly are conflicts that come up, and to me, having a structural system that creates conflicts is not a good form of government. But we can move on. We can discuss some of that more in detail, unless there's something you personally would like to point out there.
No,
Okay, so I'm sorry.
I said no. Let's go ahead.
Okay, this is a slide showing the population in Warren County, and it shows the decrease from the decrease of the smaller towns, except for Horicon, from the last census, and the increase of population in Queensbury and Glens Falls. The trend line is bad for the up county towns. There's a projected decrease of about 3% of county population in the next 10 years. Warren County is the fourth oldest population of counties in New York State. But while the county overall is barely staying the same or losing population in most of the small towns, Queensbury and Glens Falls, for the most part, are the only ones that are growing, which is going to continue to skew the representation. So the small towns will continue to have the same number of supervisors with decreasing population base.
Right. So in general, if I could sum that up, the county is very disparate in its density. High density in Queensbury and Glens Falls. The rest of the county is rather rural in character. And yet we're trying to go ahead and come up with an equitable way to manage this county. And I guess this is what the whole discussion is about.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at towns like Hague has 633 people, you have a supervisor from Hague sitting on the county board with the supervisor from Queensbury with 29,000 people. It just doesn't seem right.
But they make it right with this weighted vote. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what a weighted vote means?
Yeah, the weighted vote is it's an attempt to create that one person, one vote that the Constitution guarantees. Very few people really understand this. When I talk to people, they have a hard time understanding the at-large system in Queensbury and forget the weighted vote. It is so difficult and confusing. And to me, if the system is difficult and confusing to the average voter, it means, again, that it's not a good system. But so in an attempt to fix the votes, to make them one person, one vote, you'll see that a supervisor from Queensbury gets a weighted vote of 89, whereas the supervisor from the town of Hague gets a weighted vote of 10. And the total number of weighted votes is it 1,001 or 1,002?
Yeah, something like that.
So when the county board of supervisors has a resolution and they vote on it, the supervisors vote, and each person is allotted that weighted vote. So it's not one supervisor gets one and another supervisor gets one. They get it based on this weight. But the weighted vote does not work in committees. It does not count in committees. So you can have these, very strange situations where, 4 supervisors from very small towns will outvote, 3 supervisors from larger population towns, because they don't have the weighted vote.
Right. And I would say about 90% of the meeting time is probably in committee, with 10% being at the monthly meeting. Probably that's a generous estimate. And so it's really only 10% of the time that this weighted vote is really in effect. And, so someone from Hague or Horicon with, relatively low population still has the voice of someone, say a county supervisor from Queensbury, that represents 8 times the number of people. And this can get to be difficult because you can't go ahead in a meeting and say, well, you know, the person from Hague can only speak for 1/8 of the time as the person from Queensberry. That just doesn't work. So, and I wouldn't want it to work. But yeah, something is wrong, and that's where. Can you explain what a legislature would do, and what how do they define legislative districts?
Um, I can, but let me just back up
Okay.
one bit and just make the note that the bulk of the work done in county government by, in supervising government is done in the committees. And the committees, tend to either pass resolutions or not. And if they pass a resolution, that brings it to the Board of Supervisors, to the floor for the full board to discuss and to vote on. While supervisors can bring things to the floor at the full board, it doesn't happen that often. Usually the chair or some member will want to hear what the committee has decided as a whole. So the chair of the Board of Supervisors has an immense amount of power in who they assign to be the chair of each committee or subcommittee. And so that's really a way to skew government even worse. So in terms of a legislative form of government, you wouldn't have this convoluted weighted system. You would have a number of representatives, and I think the number that has been discussed has been 9. So you would have 9 legislators, and those legislators would be made up of equal population bases, and each legislator would have 1 vote.
So you would end up combining several towns into one legislative district.
Correct. Or in the case of Queensberry, splitting it up.
And yeah, in the case of Queensberry, which is so dense, you would have wards in there, and in Glens Falls, you would have wards. You would
Correct.
split it up. So geographically, some of those legislative districts can be very small. Others are going to be very large, but they're going to contain the same number of people.
Correct.
So there's also been a trend in population in general up here. And as you pointed out earlier, the trend is more for like Queensberry has been the only real winner, and the rest of the county has basically lost population over the years.
Right. So this skews the system even further. Queensberry in the last 10 years has gained 90% of the increase in population of the county. So that just makes the system even more convoluted.
Right. And, whereas most of the counties in New York at one time were Board of Supervisors, most of them have gone legislative just for these reasons. There's only a few that haven't. I can't remember, less than a half a dozen, I believe, and we're one of them. But there are those of us that have thought that the time is overdue for that. And if you don't mind, I'll quickly go through this slide.
Please.
Thank you. We went ahead and tried to get the federal government to go ahead and say there's a problem here. That was back with Mark Westcott, Bob Schultz, Bill Mahar, and some others. We put this together. The lawsuit took a couple of years really to go back and forth. These things drag on forever. But in the end, the federal government was not willing to go ahead and say, we're going to tell you how to run things. Basically, it came down that if you want to change it, then change it. But the way to change it is either for the county government itself to decide to change it, or for the voters in the county to go ahead and via referendum decide to change it.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that that when the group of you um, filed this lawsuit, you did it pro se, which means that you didn't hire an attorney, you were doing it yourselves. There's an interesting quote from the county attorney at the time, Brian Reichenbach, who happens to be a childhood friend of mine. We were great friends in middle school until I moved to Whitehall. And so Brian said it's a big issue, and we have a lot of material to go through to get our facts straight. And so the county was requesting a lot more time to go through all this information. Now that's the county attorney, and you as a group were representing yourselves, not as attorneys. So I think it's interesting that the county had to work so hard not to lose on this issue. Supervisor Conover had said that the feeling of the Board of Supervisors is that a supervisor system is a form of government that is closest to the people. Well, it seems to me that you can't say it's closest to the people if you're not willing to let the people know what's going on, and to make a judgment for themselves. It's kind of held secret. People don't understand what's going on.
Well, I think we'll try to end it there. I don't like to get these things too long. But I want to take that last point and reemphasize it, because you and I think both agree that the strength is when people do understand what's going on. And that's what I like so much about you. You're not hesitant to go ahead and say what you feel. You're trying to get the facts out. I'm trying to get the facts out. If people understood this better, perhaps there would be a chance of changing things. But again, I want to thank you for joining me here today, and wish you well in November. And maybe we can discuss this again, but it's a very complex discussion, and we probably put most of the people to sleep already. So I'm going to leave it at that, but there will be a bunch of documents associated with this video that you can click on the link, and you can then look at these and study these documents a little bit more detail. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the time. And as you say, it is complicated. It is hard to digest, and I'll be happy to speak with anybody as I'm going door to door. And I appreciate a lot of the work that you've done to try and save taxpayers' money in the town and in the county. So thanks for having me on.
Well, you're welcome, and we'll probably do this again. I think it deserves another look. Thank you.
Great, thanks.